Hello guys, and before we continue our favorite Russian geography lessons, discovering more locations of the destroyed military objects inside the Russian Federation, I would like to attract your attention to one very important change in the course of this war. Those of you who followed my channel from the very beginning might have noticed a tremendous change in the number, quality, and distance of the Ukrainian military operations inside Russia. With our inexpensive drones, we reach a lot. And now I'm not just talking about the success of the spiderweb operation, which was historical, but I'm also talking about these everyday attacks on the evil military objects, legitimate targets deep inside Russia. It does not happen once a week. This happens every night in dozens of locations inside Russia. And more of the Russian population understand that war has returned back home where it belongs. And listening to air raid alerts, to explosions, witnessing how the air defense fails to stop drones, more and more of Russians start doubting whether war with Ukraine was such a good idea. And by the way, such attacks also demonstrate the vulnerability of the Russian air defense and total unpreparedness to protect Russia. And actually, that is a proof of weakness of Putin's regime too. So the more objects demilitarized inside Russia, the safer it is for Ukraine and the world, but also the stronger the message is to the population of Russia that Blitzkrieg failed together with Putin. So let's talk about objects, military objects neutralized in Samara, in Stavropol Krai. These are the most important. And a HIMARS destroyed a convoy on the temporarily occupied Donetsk region territory, which is also important as that was the supply for the Russian invaders, but not anymore. So let's talk about all of this in the video. My name is Anna, I'm from Ukraine, I'm in Ukraine, and if you want to see the defeat and demilitarization of Russia, the only working peace plan, subscribe, we discuss all of that on the channel. And this is true that lots of Russian Telegram channels, lots of their social media accounts report explosions on legitimate military targets. It's actually interesting to listen how they comment. First of all, lots of bad language, that's very typical for their culture, which some, I don't know why, describe as very exquisite. In reality, it's not. Please separate some pieces of art from the national culture itself. But what is interesting, they also say, wow, what a cool blast, what a big fire. And for a second, you forget that they actually comment the destruction of their own military objects. Maybe more and more Russians understand that to survive, they need to be defeated. And by the way, lots of philosophers, military political experts also speak about that. For Russian people to survive, they must be defeated. Otherwise, that war machine will continue targeting other innocent peoples, innocent cultures, innocent natures, but also destroying millions of Russians. So this night was very loud in Samara region, first of all, because Ukrainian drones, and once again, this swarms of Ukrainian drones aren't that big at all, but the results are tremendous because they target the super explosive objects. For example, a leading factory of various explosive materials in Samara. And you don't need to be a military expert to understand that when a drone with a minor explosive targets a huge explosive factory, well, the firework is guaranteed. Same as we always follow the rules of war. This is what makes me very proud of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. Despite all the violence, despite all the war crimes they committed against my country, we keep targeting and neutralizing only legitimate objects. And I'm grateful when Chancellor Merz, President Macron, Keir Starmer keep talking about that. In the world of, I don't want to say in the world of Donald Trump, but it's super important to protect the truth about this war. And this is actually one of the missions of my channel too. Please join the community. If you share this attitude and share the videos, if you share our opinion. Another object demilitarized tonight was located in Stavropol Krai, and that is also a plant that was involved in the production of various explosives, and Russians need them to target innocent civilians in Ukraine and also to supply different enemies around the world. As a part of the explosives, it was also responsible for the production of missile fuel. And to fuel all that evil, all these instruments of war, they do need fuel. There are more and more conflicts and wars appearing in different corners of the world, and trust me, that is the result of the escalation management that never works with war criminals and dictators like Putin. Only their defeat and demilitarization. And that is why we were happy to learn about the destruction of a Russian military convoy with lots of tanks, with lots of invaders that were neutralized in the result of a HIMARS strike. We often think in Ukraine how different the war could be if back in 2022, back in 2023, there were no doubts, there was no escalation management, there was no delays of the military aid to Ukraine, because that resulted in a lot of losses and troubles in my country that deserves to defeat the evil. Because more and more countries actually realize that Russia is a global threat, together with Iran, together with China, together with North Korea. They don't plan to stop. And we have actually talked about the dangers that Russia plans to create and actually to test NATO. And I genuinely worry for some countries that Russia sees as a part of the Frankenstein USSR 2.0 project. Of course, united we can prevent that, and that's the Ukrainian plan. That's the only peace plan that we accept here. But let me know in the comments below, do you think that the global conflict, the global war is closer after the election of Donald Trump than it was before? Because that's exactly the feeling I get. And I've read an article about one speeches of Donald Tusk, who is the Prime Minister of Poland, and he spoke about that. So he said that since the Second World War, it seems like we are the closest to the global conflict. Let me know, by the way, would you like a separate video about Iran-Israel war and how it influences Russia, Ukraine, and, all the global problems around the world? But Russia is to blame here too, because unpunished evil grows. This lack of reaction, restraints, punishment inspires more and more evil regimes to test, to provoke, to invade, and this can bring us to the global conflict. Sometimes I have this feeling we are already in. You may not have one, but when we think about the history of the Second World War or of the First World War, they were not coined World War in times they actually happened. It is done later, with the historians analyzing the size, the involvement. But Ukraine is not fighting just against Russia. China is all in, Iran, North Korean soldiers on the ground, boots on the ground. So it's not a local conflict, and don't let them, trick you, but also do not try to escape the reality, because it can actually reach you with a Russian, Iranian missile, and nobody wants that. It's much better to be alert, to be overly prepared, and of course, honestly, if we needed any preemptive strikes, that would be with Russia. And on my channel, on my new channel, there is a new video where I speak about the history of the Ukrainian nuclear weapons. How many do we have? Could we maintain them back at the moment we decided we will give them up for the security guarantees? Can we restore the nuclear potential of Ukraine? Do we possess resources, skills, people? All these questions are answered, so support that channel, subscribe to it, and do check the video. It was really interesting for me to do some investigation before recording it. And there you will also find an answer to the question that you often ask me. Do I support the idea of Ukraine getting its nuclear status back? So do check the video and let me know what you think about that in the comments below. Also follow me on X, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, and join the Discord community. Check our merch shop for lots of good items that work well as reminders and conversation starters about Ukraine, and specifically our summer limited edition to celebrate the success of the spider web operation. I believe these are collectibles already. Thank you for buying me coffees, becoming my patrons and sponsors of the channel. But most importantly, thank you for standing with Ukraine. Slava Ukraini!